There's this site on the internet called the Escapist, formerly known as Escapist magazine, and the problem with the Escapist, its forums specifically, is that its moderation is wildly inconsistent. Disclaimer: before I begin, let me admit that I was banned from the forums on the Escapist, so I might be biased. Look at this graph. It's how many warnings every user has gotten on this site since its V2 rebirth at the end of March 2020. The people in red and the 4 people on the end there are banned from the site. Before we investigate this graph further, let's be clear about how warnings work on the site. When you do something against the rules of the site, a mod might mark your post with a warning, politely asking you to stop. These warnings are publicly visible and have a unique HTML tag associated with them. So what I did was I wrote a script to go through every page of every thread on the forums and collect all these warnings. I've compiled all the data into a Google Sheets page, which you can access in the description below. It's possible that a user may have deleted a message with a warning on it, so that nobody but the moderators can see the message or the warning. So it could be that there are some warnings that my script just didn't find. I'm not a moderator and I don't have any special access or tools. This is just me combing through the HTML. According to the rules of the site, it's supposed to be a 3-strike system. First strike is a warning, second strike is a temporary ban, and the third strike is a permaban. Now there are a lot of caveats and exceptions to this. First is that not every warning might be publicly displayed. My graph might be missing some information. A mod may have reached out to a user over a private message and given them a warning that way. Assuming the best of the Escapist moderation team, they would categorize and track these verbal warnings internally so that they can know how many warnings a user has. Warnings like this, given through PM, wouldn't show up here. For simplicity's sake, we can say that these verbal warnings are informal and that my graph only counts the formal warnings. Secondly, there are what's called zero-tolerance offenses according to the rules, where if you break one of these rules, you get instantly permabanned with no recourse. In contrast, there are infraction offenses, where it's not an instant ban, but rather like a strike against your account. It could be that those with fewer than 3 warnings committed one of these zero-tolerance offenses and were instantly banned, or they got several verbal warnings and were banned according to the 3-strike rule that way. Third, the final offense is rarely shown on this graph. When a user is banned, the post that they were banned from isn't normally marked. I know this because of my own example. There's no mod message attached to the top of the post saying that the user was banned for this message, so anyone who was banned and who didn't request it, it's fair to assume that they actually made some other post, which was the final strike. You can normally tell this just by looking at the user's posts and see if the last one had a warning on it. So with that all in mind, what does this graph tell us? It tells us that 0 users on this graph have been banned by the book, according to the rules. Black Diamond's bar is the closest to what we would expect to see if it were done by the book. His first strike is just a warning, his second might have come with a suspension, and then his third, which wouldn't have been shown in this graph, would result in a permaban. However, looking more closely at his posts, he only made 1 post after the one that got him his second warning, and that one other post has nothing objectionable in it, so it's fair to say that he was banned after only 2 strikes. On the right hand side, we can see 4 users who were banned without even a single formal warning. Maybe these users committed a zero-tolerance offense and that's why they were never warned before being banned. Maybe these users were given a normal of informal warnings that were just never publicly attached to posts. We'll get back to that and attempt to answer those questions later. Let's look up the left-hand side of the graph at all the users who have 3 or more warnings. Remember, according to the procedure and according to the final strike isn't formally marked rule of thumb, you're never supposed to have more than 2 warnings. The 3rd strike is a ban. Everyone in this box should be banned. They should have been given a warning, a temp ban, and the 3rd and final strike would have been a ban. But only 1 user, 1 out of 9, is banned. Let's not count Shadyside because they requested their own ban after they had already gotten 3 strikes. So we can see that the Escapist moderation team is clearly disregarding their own rules and giving certain users special treatment. Going back to the right side of the graph, I've reached out to Yoshi, Drathnoxus, and B-Cell and gotten their side of the story. I tried to reach out to Saloon, but she declines to comment. Yoshi's experience was a 2 strikes you're out system. His first strike got him temp banned without a formal or informal warning. He said the comment that got him that first temp ban was a comment about the chaos in America during 2020 with COVID and the BLM riots and all that. We're not sure, we can't find the actual post, maybe it was deleted, but his post was possibly one of these. His second and final strike, according to him, was this post, which says, "Why should I be nice if people aren't nice/civil to me back?" Now, none of these look like zero-tolerance offenses to me. Giving the mod team the benefit of the doubt, the statement about the chaos in America could be considered upsetting or inconsiderate to Americans who have to live with it, and could be considered trolling. The second statement could be considered an admission that one doesn't want to be civil. At this point, according to their own written procedure, a temp ban should be issued and that users should be allowed to cool off and then come back and post. In Yoshi's case, the procedure wasn't followed. Not even the admission that he isn't going to be civil should deserve harsher treatment, as if it were a zero-tolerance offense, or maybe it counts for 2 strikes instead of 1, especially considering users like Revnak, who have 6 formal warnings and who publicly said, "I don't have to respect anyone I don't want to, and I genuinely do not care if I get banned from the site." That sounds a lot worse than what Yoshi said, yet one of these users is banned, and the other isn't. So why wasn't Yoshi given 6 chances like Revnak was? Either Yoshi is being treated with special harshness, or Revnak and others like him are being treated with special leniency. For Drathnoxus, actually he was unbanned during the writing of this script. According to Nick, he was banned without a warning for reporting a bunch of posts, and then Nick walked that back, disking Drath in the process without apologizing for anything. Why jump straight to banning? Why not just give this user a warning, even an informal one? Just send him a PM saying, "Hey, stop spamming the report queue so much, what's going on?" Especially given this user's clean record of good conduct, having never received a warning, formal or informal, previously. Or just give the user a benefit of the doubt and treat the reports as if they were made in good faith, and then act on those reports according to the rules. Why assume the worst of this user when others are given such leniency? See, Nick realizes that this isn't the way to go, which is why he undid this decision. And I get it, we all make mistakes, we're all human, but this is a pattern of behavior. This isn't the only one he's done this to. He's done it to multiple users, including myself and at least one other person. Why not just follow your own stated procedure, and then you won't have to continually walk back your own decisions when you overstep? And then in a subsequent post, he admits that there is no suspension system. The procedure says there is one, but there actually isn't. Procedure is inaccurate, and he admits it. He also says he takes it seriously when banning longtime members, but he still bans longtime members without a single warning. Then after he does so, a few days later, when he, I assume, cools down and reflects about what he did with a level head, he reconsiders and reverses his decision. And that's good. That's great. He gets kudos for undoing a bad decision that deserves to be praised. But it would have been better for him to not ever make that bad decision in the first place, right? And he could have easily avoided this whole situation, including me making this whole video, by just following the process he already has in place, written in black and white in his own code of conduct. And Nick is the administrator of the site. You can see it on his profile. He's the one who takes personal responsibility for all these bans and then undoing them. I'm not just singling him out. He is the only person in charge of this. There's no one else to take the blame for any of this. He has moderators, but they don't take responsibility for banning or unbanning people. I don't even know if he consults them before banning people. I consider all the moderators to be practically innocent. But because of this whole situation of not following the procedure, now other users are rightly questioning whether or not they could be punished for things they've said months in the past, or for reporting something said months in the past, as if there's a statute of limitation on posts because of the precedent set in this example. There's nothing against that according to the rules, but people are confused because the rules aren't being followed. This is what happens when you disregard your own procedure. Your users are confused and worried, as they should be. He replies saying that it's a case-by-case basis, which in my opinion explains nothing. You can say it's on a case-by-case basis, and we could trust that if we can trust your judgment to be fair and balanced if you have a long track record of such fair behavior. But look at the graph. This is the result of Nick's case-by-case judgment. Can we really trust that? Let's talk about some of the other users. B-Cell's ban is arguably deserved for being hate speech, but we'll come back to that later. Like I said, Salun's ban is a total mystery. She declined to comment. There might be more users than this that were banned without warnings, but my script didn't catch them. Moving to the left, we come to Hausman, which is me. For my case, we have to talk about verbal, informal warnings. It's not always clear to the user that informal warnings are actual warnings. There's no sort of disclaimer that says, this is a warning, and it's being attached to your file that makes it unambiguously clear to the recipient that they've been served a warning. When Nick was explaining my ban to the users of the Escapist, he said that I had received multiple warnings. Now that was news to me. That was the first time I had ever heard that I received multiple warnings. So either Nick is lying, mistaken, or I was mistaken in that I didn't know I was being given these warnings. I was contacted a total of 3 times by either a mod or Nick himself. The first was by a mod along with the public formal warning in this graph, giving it some context and an explanation for why it was marked as a warning. I can't show you a screenshot of it because I can't access my account, of course. The second message was by Nick demanding that I change my avatar. At the time, I had it set to a GIF about election fraud. He indicated that he didn't want conspiracy theories on his site, and he asked me to change it, and if I refused, I would be banned. I changed it immediately. The third was in an email after reversing a wrongful ban after the events of January 6th. So at this point, how many warnings would you say that I had received? To me, I only count one warning, the formal warning. I had no idea that the avatar thing was being held against me as a second warning. As A, it wasn't against the rules. B, it didn't come with a temporary suspension like a second warning is supposed to come with. So, assuming that it was 2 warnings, I would have needed to just mess up one more time in order to be banned, according to the letter of the law. I was thinking that I had another strike left. I thought I only had 1 warning. It seems obvious to say, but users and moderators should be on the same page as regards to how many strikes a person has. A user should never feel blindsided with a ban because they weren't aware that they were racking up warnings. If a warning is given, it should be unambiguous. That's the point of giving a warning. A person should feel warned. The final strike on my account was from an unmarked message where they accused me of trolling. Let's just assume that this is valid, that all of them are valid. I'm not going to argue anything or say that I shouldn't have been banned. Assuming all 3 strikes were valid, the formal warning, the avatar warning, and the last trolling post, then they follow procedure in my case. If they didn't follow procedure and I had only received 1 warning, then they disregarded the procedure and banned me regardless of how many warnings I actually had. Either way makes them look bad. Whether they followed procedure in my case or if they didn't, they're guilty of being inconsistent, because some users are being given up to 6 chances, whereas I was only given the bare minimum. It's selective enforcement of the rules, and that's obviously inconsistent. One last thing, the code of conduct says that users are entitled to appeal if they feel that the moderation team is wrong. But there's no official way to actually do this. There's a contact form at the bottom of the page, but when you're banned, you can't even open it. It throws an error. And you can't even log out, because that throws an error too. So the hacky way to do it is to delete your cookies or use another browser. Then you'll be logged out, and then you can use the contact form, which presumably goes into the same inbox as every other message filled out by the contact form, regardless of the subject. At this point, I guess Nick just sorts them out manually. Nowhere does it say that this is the official or even suggested way to appeal a decision. There is no suggested way. You kind of just have to figure out on your own. The simplest explanation for why this is that they just copy-pasted their rules from the V1 form. In the V1 forms, they actually had an official appeal system, separate from the normal Contact Us form. It's funny because this is actually proven by the fact that they have two different code of conducts on their site. If you go to escapistmagazine.com/v2/code of conduct, you'll see this, a version of the code of conduct that is a direct copy and paste and includes outdated information about a message appearing in your inbox. This was copy-pasted from the V1 forums. However, there's a modified version of this that exists as a sticky announcement, and it has this information removed and replaced with something else. I'm not accusing them of anything malicious here, it's probably just an oversight. On the V1 forums, you weren't locked out of anything when you were banned. As it says, you see a message in your inbox giving you a link to the appeal system. That's how it used to work. When they migrated to the new forums, they lost this capability. So I guess they deleted that section from the V2 code of conduct. But there are still other references to the appeal system in the V2 code of conduct. Did they just overlook these? Probably. What's the official word, though? Are people entitled to appeal, or aren't they? And if they are, how? Should they be going through the normal contact form? That seems to work for some users, but is it still an entitlement? Is it still taken seriously, or is it just subject to Nick's whims? I know for my part, I've tried to appeal, and I've been given radio silence, whereas Draft appealed and got a response faster than I did. I have to assume that I'm being ignored, and he isn't. Why is that? But I digress, let's go back to the graph. Now that we know the context behind some of these bans, let's count the users who are banned with 3 strikes or fewer, excluding those who are accused of committing a zero-tolerance offense, so BCEL, and excluding those who requested a ban. So these were the users who were banned either according to strict adherence to procedure, or the procedure just wasn't followed in their case. Black Diamond, Hausman, Yoshi, Drath, who is now no longer banned, but he was at the time when I made all this stuff, and I'm not gonna undo it. Now let's compare that to the users who were allowed to continue posting, even after 3 warnings, even if they were eventually banned later. Cock, Shadyside, Stroopwaffle, Draco, Allegiant, Butian, Iron, Super Ewok, Revnak. So that just says it all. Why are these users being treated differently? Why are some users being banned with fewer than 3 warnings? And why are other users not banned after 3, 4, 5, 6 warnings? Why isn't the Escapist moderation team following their own stated procedure? Moderation over at the Escapist is clearly inconsistent, and I think the data proves it. Yeah, on some level, I would expect it to be a little inconsistent. We're all humans, not robots, so we can't always agree on what is or isn't a rule violation, and that's unavoidable, no matter where you are. I would expect the mods to be reasonable and be more merciful or more harsh depending on the circumstances. For example, I would expect a little leniency towards someone like BCEL, who clearly struggles with the English language. Here's what he had to say about his ban. Now, maybe take into account that he might be from a different culture, or that he has some difficulty in finding the right words to express himself. Maybe don't assume the worst. I would expect that given certain controversial topics like BLM, January 6th, anything about politics or culture wars, the moderators would understand that things might get a little heated and people might go too far. Certainly Nick got heated after the events of the 6th, and myself and at least one other user was banned. I remember that my ban message says that I was supporting terrorism. I wasn't, and Nick himself recognized that when those bans were reversed and a non-apology/warning was given. So this example, as well as Drath's example, shows that these decisions aren't being made according to procedure or even a cool, impassioned approach to moderation. It's just the emotional, knee-jerk reactions of a hasty person who has to take some time to cool down, reconsider, and then walk back his mistakes. At least 3 different times he's done this. As shown by this post, your own users recognize that you shouldn't be reacting this way, and that they would never expect for someone to be instantly banned for reporting some posts, for example. Nick, being hot-headed and prone to overreaction, explains all these hasty bans he has to undo, but it doesn't explain the favoritism shown for some users. That's still a mystery. And I apologize, Nick, if you feel that I'm bashing you personally. I'm not. I'm criticizing your moderation style. I'm saying that you go too far sometimes, and I'm asking you to take a critical look, do some introspection at what you've been doing and why this keeps happening, so you can stop. Nothing against you personally. I don't know you. This isn't an attack. I'm just criticizing you. I don't think the 3-strike rule is good, per se. It's way too strict, and I'm glad that it's not being stuck to. But it is inconsistent and hypocritical. It's there in black and white that is the rule, but you're not following your own rules. I would ask that you recognize this and change your stated procedure to the procedure you're actually following behind closed doors. I'm asking that you do this for the good of the community. I have some disagreements with the rules, but generally speaking, I think they're good rules. You just need to be consistent with your enforcement of them. What you have now is a 3-strike rule that you are clearly not following. Users don't know what to expect, so they have this constant nagging fear that they could be banned for any reason at any time, regardless of the severity of their infraction, unaware of whether or not they're on thin ice with someone in a position of power because the warnings they were allegedly given aren't clearly defined. Is Drath now on thin ice too, after his ban was removed? Is he aware of that? If a user stumbles over a lot of rule-breaking content in one place, or content that happens to be a few months old, should they be afraid of reporting it because they don't want to get banned? The precedent set by this is unclear. Users are unclear. The other consequences of this is that users feel that certain other users get away with a lot more than they should, which is evident by the graph. If you've updated your internal guidelines and your moderation rules, great. Tell the community about it so that everyone can be on the same page. Do some revising to your code of conduct. So, Nick, if you're listening, at the end of the day, these are your forums. You are the king, the lord, the god of the Escapist forums. You can do whatever you want, ban anyone for any or no reason at all, and you don't have to justify yourself or answer to anybody. But if you care about this community, if you truly care, treat the community with respect. Treat them equally. Give them clear expectations, clear warnings, and whatever procedure you decide to follow, respect your community by actually following that procedure. Make judgments with a cool head. Calm down and really consider whether or not banning a user is the right thing to do, so that you don't have to walk it back later. And if you ever do have to walk it back, actually apologize for acting rashly. Clean up the 2 different code of conducts you have so that they both read the same and don't contain misleading information about features that don't even exist. Don't be overly harsh with certain users while turning a blind eye to the conduct of others. Don't promise that users can appeal when in some cases they can't. Look at your own Twitter posts. You believe that people can change their mindsets and learn from mistakes. You bemoan the lack of conversation. You don't want to be someone who just jumps to conclusions. So why ban people without warnings? You're not giving them warnings, chances to change their mindsets and learn from mistakes. You bemoan the lack of conversation? Well, where's your appeal system that allows you to have conversations with people you've banned? Why does it work for some users but not others? You don't want to jump to conclusions, but by banning people without even giving them a warning or an opportunity to explain themselves, aren't you doing just that? Here you talk about Reset Era and say that they have a crazy moderation team. Isn't selective enforcement of rules, allowing some users to go 6 strikes in a 3 strikes you're out system, being lenient with these users and extremely harsh with other users, being so inconsistent? Isn't that kind of crazy? This is your community, and it is a community. These people talk with each other every day, whether you're a part of the conversation or not. They don't come here for you. If anything, they come here for Yahtzee, but mostly they come here for each other. They come to share news, to commiserate, to vent, to grieve, to laugh, to play, to debate, and to learn. The users are the community. And this is your community, but the community itself is a living, breathing organism with a will of its own. If you care about it, you'll nurture it, you'll do right by it, and it'll grow and flourish in return. What will it grow up to be? Will it grow to be an awe-inspiring, a majestic, a shining example for all other communities that you want it to be? Or will it be a weak, battered, paranoid shell, a sad reminder of what it could be? Your decisions ultimately determine that. Nick, if you're watching, I sincerely thank you for sticking through these almost 30 minutes, for really listening to and hopefully taking this criticism to heart. I believe in you, and I believe you'll ultimately do the right thing. I think you are a good person, maybe a little hot-headed sometimes, but you might be the best editor-in-chief that the Escapist has ever had. Now, you know you didn't create the Escapist, you inherited it, and the Escapist had some problems that you've also had to inherit as well. Some of the older rules that were brought over, some dictates from above. The users have bad blood with each other, and you have to deal with all of that. I can't wholly relate. I don't know how much work you have to do, how stressful it might be. But I think it can be a little better, and I think you can make it a little easier by just following some of the suggestions I've given in this video. And I hope you take something out of this video that makes the Escapist community a little better, and it makes your job a little easier. That's all I want. I hope this video helps you.